Welcome to Cooking Fireside with Eric, brought to you by the Wilmington Public Library. And today, we'll be making a recipe from 1796 from Amelia Simmons' cookbook, American Cookery. And the recipe today is a steak pie, which I think you will enjoy, and anyone who you may share it with will also enjoy. Thank you for joining. Let's go ahead and go over the ingredients. For the beefsteak pie, or meat pie as you can call it, we have very simple ingredients. And you'll notice that with a lot of the old recipes, that it is simple ingredients. So what we have is our pie crust, or you can use a puff paste, which there are also old recipes for that as well, that you can go off of from cookbooks. We have a shoulder roast, a beef shoulder roast. We have a white onion, flour, salt and pepper, and any seasoning you may also want to add to it. I've added mace and sage and a couple other little pepper powders that I made from my garden. And a 1/4 pound of butter. Then we also have a fluid of your choice. That could be either beef stock or broth, in this case, what I have here. You can also add beer, or whatever you'd like to add as your liquid, which eventually makes the gravy, which is kind of neat about this recipe, because you kind of just throw everything together, all of this chopped up into slices. You throw it all together in layers, and it makes its own gravy and its own meal. It's very minimal work. So, and then something important about the meat, and you can use any kind of meat you want actually, as long as it's on the leaner side, such as the shoulder roast. And these are going to be nice, relatively thin slices. Now that we have our shoulder roast cut up, we'll go ahead and chop up our onion. We'll slice up our onion, because the idea of what we're trying to get to is that we're trying to make layers. So we got our beef into nice slices, and then we'll end up layering it with the onions when we eventually go to make our pie. So you can go ahead and chop it in half, and then just continue to make slices out of it. Now we have our onion or our beef cut up. So our next step will be to lay out our pie crust here. So first of all, what we'll want to do is move this out of this way, and we'll set our pie crust in. And you would do this just the way you would with any other pie. You can roll your crust, be it homemade or store-bought, depending on how ambitious you are. Here, I got this from the store. But we're going to go ahead and put in our pie crust and make sure it's nice in there, nice and firm and flat around all edges. So what we're going to do from here is layer it up. And what I mean by that is we'll take a beef layer. So we'll put in our beef. And make a nice bottom layer of beef. And then we'll go ahead and take a layer of onions and put that on top of the beef. And with all this recipe, it's all to your liking. If you don't like onion, you don't have to add onion, but it does go nicely with the recipe. And you can add as much light onion or beef as you want, or any of the ingredients for that matter. The old recipes and old cookbooks from the 18th or 19th century don't even have measurements made out a lot of the time, or specified. They kind of leave it up to you and your liking and your family's liking. The next layer will be butter, and you can just drop that in there. Okay, next step is our seasoning. Okay, and then next we'll add some flour. Now, the magical thing about this pie is that these layers and all the ingredients, it makes its own gravy. So there's no making a gravy first or anything like that. There's no mixing anything. You just kind of chop it up and layer it. That's it, and sprinkle it on. So we just continue this process. Continue this process until it's filled up to the top. Our next step is to cover this pie up and seal it up. So let's go ahead and take our other crust. If you're going to make this from scratch, just remember that you'll need to make 2 crusts. And if you look up the original recipe, which I'll post down below, you notice that they don't even use a bottom crust for it. It's just around the edge, and this is just to seal it up. But everybody in my family likes the crust, so I do it top and bottom. We'll go ahead and pinch these around the edges here, fold it under and pinch it. We'll try to make it look a little bit appealing. Okay, our pie is sealed up. So, the fat from the butter and the beef isn't going to be enough to make the gravy that we want. So what we have to do is now we're going to add some sort of liquid, whatever flavor you want, into this pie. And we do that by cutting a circle in the middle of it, ever so gently. Like that. You don't have to go all the way, you can if you want to. I'll just go ahead and just leave a little tab there and flip it up. So what I'm using today is a beef broth, any beef broth or stock you want to get from the store. And like I said, you can add beer or any other sort of fluid that you want. We'll just pour that in, kind of let it settle through, and eventually it'll fill up and won't soak down anymore. So we'll let that settle a bit. And let's go ahead and add a little bit of the beer that I have, just to give it that flavor. You can shake it around, let all that liquid settle. Please don't mind my chickens. All right. Looks like I got a little bit of liquid coming out the side over there, which is perfectly fine. And I think that we're pretty much filled up here. So now that's filled up, let's go ahead and close up our flap. It looks like maybe I've done a little bit too much juice, which is fine. So let's cover up our flap and go on to our next step. Is to take this delicious looking pie and all of its glorious layers and put it into our oven. Since we're cooking fireside, our oven today will be a 12-inch Dutch oven. For those of you at home, if you're using a regular oven, the temperature is going to be approximately 300 to 325. In this case, 325 on a Dutch oven If you're using briquettes, it's 23 bricks, 7 on the bottom and 16 on top. If you're using hardwood to cook, such as oak, or if you're using lump coal, it takes a little bit of a guesstimation. But in this case, I'm kind of got a mix of both here today. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our coals on the bottom. Kind of evenly distribute them. And that's our challenge here with cooking outside, over the fire, cooking fireside, is temperature and heat. We're getting into the autumn time here, so it's a little bit chillier outside and we got a little bit of a breeze. So if you can see here, I made a windbreak since the wind is coming from the west. And we may need a little bit more coals to keep that temperature up, so that way we thoroughly cook our food. The lump coal and the coals from your fire pit burn a bit hotter. So you have to be careful not to burn your food as well and not go too much. Those of you that will be cooking at home in the oven, you won't really have that problem. And let's go ahead and put our Dutch oven on top of that. Okay. Since we're cooking in a Dutch oven, we don't want our pie pan to be directly on the bottom so as to not burn our crust. So what we want to do is we'll want to have some sort of trivet down there. Now you could have a regular cast iron trivet or a forged trivet, but I don't have that. So I'm going to go ahead and go with 3 canning lids, and that should be enough to keep the pie pan from being directly on the bottom heat and burning our crust. So let's go ahead and set our pie on there. Go ahead and set that directly in there. All right, let's cover her up. Set on top, and then we'll go ahead and put our about 16 coals on top. Now this is going to cook approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And what you want to do is preheat your oven ahead of time. Here we're cooking outside, so maybe I should have preheated the Dutch oven. Well, sometimes it's a little bit easier just to kind of get it going first and have your pie gradually get up to temperature, which is perfectly fine. In the end, it's all going to come out just fine. If you are cooking outside like me, one thing that you'll need to remember to do, and it's easy to forget it, you get into talking and hanging out, enjoying the sunset, is that you'll want to rotate this Dutch oven, not just the pan, but also the lid. You want to rotate it 90 degrees about every 20 minutes or so, 10 minutes. That way you get a nice even heat throughout the Dutch oven. been about an hour, so let's see what we've got. Now I kind of cheated a little bit. And normally with Dutch ovens, you don't want to open them up and release your heat that you have built up inside, or it kind of defeats the purpose of the oven. But I did take a look, so as you can see, I removed some of the coals because the top was getting a little bit crusty, a little bit dark. So let's see what we got going on here. Oh yeah, that looks good. Very beautiful. We got a little bit darker on the top, but that's just fine because some people like their crust a little bit dark. So here comes the challenging part, is getting this pie out of the Dutch oven. They do make tools for this where you can go in and grab the sides of it, or you can improvise and make your own. I'm just going to go ahead in here and grab it on out very carefully. Look at that. See, it's kind of hard to see with the light, but that is a beautiful looking crust. Let's move it off to the side to cool off, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to want this to cool off for a while. The liquids right now are kind of boiling in there, so we want it to cool off so everything kind of congeals and gets solidified so we can cut it off into nice neat slices. So let's go ahead and just set this on our bench right now. You guys in the house or cooking your oven, you can just let it sit on the countertop somewhere off on the side on another cold trivet, and just let this thing cool off for maybe about, I don't know, let's say about 20 minutes or so. Well, we've let the pie sit for, I don't know, about a half hour, 45 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and dig in and see what we got here. I'm gonna go ahead and get my knife and my plate. Let's go ahead and cut it. And you can see it's a little bit crispy, and right in this area, you know, like I said, my family likes crispy crust, and somebody came over and snatched a little bit of the crust, and I just can't help that, you know. So let's go ahead and dig in and see what we got. We probably could have let this cool a little bit longer. You can see there's some steam coming up, but we're outside right now, so it might be steamier than normal. Come in here with our spatula. Some of this out. That's a big massive pile. There you go. And see, everything cooked perfectly. The onions are nice and translucent. The beef is cooked thoroughly through, and the crust is nice and crisp, and you get that little treat of crust. Please feel free to try this at home, and just remember, you can always do this in the oven. I personally like that smoky flavor that you get with cooking by the fireside. And as you can see, all those layers we made filled out perfectly throughout the pie. It's a nice even coat. There's no extra flour, there's no extra butter. Everything just went perfectly. It's such an easy dish to make. I know you'll love it. You should definitely try it, whether you try it in a Dutch oven by the fireside like I like to do, because you get that nice smoky flavor added in there, or you can try it in the kitchen in your oven, and it comes out just as good, just as perfect. And I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you get to try this recipe. Thank you very much.